players who will have a breakout year. Now, top of this list for me, Washington State quarterback Cameron Ward. So I got to talk with Cam Ward at Pac-12 Media Day. Outstanding dude. I really enjoy him. He is from just outside of Houston, Texas. And I was asking him what it's like in Pullman. He's like, hey, man, I'm fish out of water here. Like, it's cold. I don't know what to do with all that. And I can't get nothing. It's either Amazon or it's not getting here at all. The mall is not great. Like, he's there to play football, right? But he also is playing football for his former head coach at Incarnate Word, who is the offensive coordinator at Washington State now. And last year, he passed for 4,628 yards. He had 47 touchdowns, just 10 interceptions. He is a former Jerry Rice Award winner, which goes to the top true freshman in the FCS. And he threw for 610 yards with 7 touchdowns and just 1 interception against Southeastern Louisiana last year. He's got the goods, but what I love most about this dude is that they didn't throw the football when he played high school football. They were like a wing T offense, and he was the quarterback. So he needed to be identified, and one of the greatest things that ever happened to him was getting offered a scholarship to play quarterback at Incarnate Word. He's paying that forward by going to Washington State, following his former head coach to Washington State to be offensive coordinator. I expect him to have an outstanding year this year, if not throw for 4,000 yards, perhaps even 30 touchdowns, and I think he's going to keep it under 10 interceptions. The way that people are talking about Caleb Williams last year, I think people are going to be talking about Cam Ward this year. And I think he's got 3 years of eligibility left, if not 2 years of eligibility left. So you're going to see him this year and next year, provided, the NFL does not decide that they want him, and we'll see how that goes. Next play on the list for me over here is USC linebacker Shane Lee. Now, Shane Lee broke into our consciousness after Dylan Moses got hurt in Tuscaloosa 2019. Shane Lee was thrust into the middle linebacker position. He had 86 tackles, 1 interception that year, and then got usurped and lost his damn job to Henry To'oTo'o, who was transferring in from Tennessee to play Mike linebacker. We haven't heard from Shane Lee since. Now he is at SC. The reason I have circled that is because Shane Lee has all the tools that you want. It's about teaching him how to be the dude that sees thing, hits thing. And he's got a guy that knows exactly what that looks like in Brian Odom, who's coming over from Oklahoma. I'm going to go a little bit inside baseball on your national folk for just a second. So at Oklahoma, Alex Grinch comes in. He brings in Brian Odom. Brian Odom looks at Kenneth Murray Jr. and says, I got a dude that's got all the ability in the world. All I got to do is teach him to be a linebacker. It took 1 year, and then Kenneth Murray became the dude that saw and hit, who could run down everybody. As a matter of fact, he got to show this early in the year. I want to say it's 2019 when they played Houston. D'Eriq King's trying to run away from Kenneth Murray Jr., and he can't do it. Kenneth Murray Jr. is 6'2", 240 pounds. Shane Lee has that kind of athleticism and that kind of speed. Brian Odom knows how to get that out of a player. If that connection works, it's going to be outstanding, to say nothing of what Rajon Davis might be able to do with Brian Odom in his corner. I'm excited to see what happens for Shane Lee at USC. Last player, I'm touching on him just a little bit, was Justin Flo. Again, just 15 quarters of football over the course of his college football career. But when he's been on the field, he's been outstanding. You just got to keep him healthy. You keep him healthy, you keep him on the football field, he's going to help you win football games. All right. Now, how many teams can compete in the Pac-12 to make the college football playoff? 1, as far as I see it. 1. It might be Utah, it might be USC. Hell, it might be Cal or Stanford, right? Because both of those programs have good defense and they know who they are. That's a lot of how I look at this is, what's your culture like? How long has your culture been in place? And can you succeed, all things considered? Same thing could be true of UCLA, who's got Dorian Thompson-Robinson coming back for another year, and I expect them to be, if nothing else, a problem in the Pac-12. And a problem means 7 to 9 wins, right? You have all of that in the Pac-12, but you only have room for one player to get into the college football playoff. A lot of this has to come back to just how the voters see you. And the voters in this position are the selection committee. A bunch of people in suits that are going to sit around at the Gaylord Texan outside of Dallas and tell us who they think is a good college football team. I don't like that as a process. I think the scoreboard ought to be the selection committee. And if you win, you should have an opportunity to play for the college football playoff national championship, which is why I like a 16-team playoff. But until then, the Pac-12 has to put its best foot forward, and its best foot forward means one team. I think Utah's in the best position to do this. They'll have the SEC East win if they are able to beat Florida against Florida, which most people will tell you is the second most storied program, if not the most storied program in the SEC East. And then you'll be able to go beat up on USC, who everybody knows about. Even if they were 4-8 last year, people will forget about it because Lincoln Riley's the head coach, Caleb Williams the quarterback. And perhaps you have some things to show other folks in that Cam Rising is an outstanding quarterback. As a matter of fact, he goes to the Manning Academy, and he's the dude that people are talking about, mostly because of his ability to move around. Now, Cam Rising was also a guy that Lincoln Riley wanted. He had committed to Oklahoma. He wasn't sure that Lincoln Riley was going to be there. He's probably just like 3 years ahead on that one, by the way, but nothing there. Then he goes to Texas, transfers to Utah, and it works out. He is an example of how the transfer portal is supposed to work, because if Cam Rising and Utah don't find each other, we're not talking about Utah this year, because I thought that Charlie Brewer was going to be that guy. Charlie Brewer went from Baylor to Utah, started, didn't work out. He's at Liberty now. Maybe he ends up being Malik Willis 2.0. We'll see. But I don't see it as having more than one team in the way that I could see the SEC or the Big Ten doing those things. So, who will play and win the Pac-12 championship? I think you're going to look at Utah, and I think you're going to look at USC to make the Pac-12 championship, take advantage of this first year in which we're talking about the Pac-12 not having divisions. So you could have two teams that were once upon a time from the Pac-12 South playing in the college football playoff if both Utah and USC show up there with, no losses and just the one win. Or just the one loss or no losses. So we're looking at what? We're looking at 11-1. We're looking at 12-0 going into the Pac-12 championship, which is going to be played on a Friday night. We'll make it work. But I would like to see Lincoln Riley versus Kyle Whittingham, because I think styles make fights. I saw what Kyle Whittingham was able to do against Ryan Day, and that's a lot of what I'm basing this on. Is quiet as it's kept, there isn't really an offense that has given Morgan Scalley and Kyle Whittingham a problem. Like, if you can control the ball and you can run it on them, you can win. But that's a very short list of teams. As a matter of fact, this is why I end up talking so well about teams like San Diego State, right? It's because they just want to grind you out. It's why we talk about Wisconsin, Minnesota, these teams that have really decided that their philosophy and mentality is going to be about running the football first and playing outstanding defense in the front seven. Utah's the only team outside of Oregon with Mario Cristobal that's been able to do that with some level of consistency. And then you talk about places like Cal, right, where Justin Wilcox wants to absolutely control the ball and play defense, being a defensive coach. Stanford wants to do the same thing. I think Utah's just the best version of all of those teams in the Pac-12. USC is going to try to introduce a thing that Graham Harrell tried to introduce with Clay Helton at USC, which is, throwing the ball all over the yard. I don't know that that's going to work, man. Like, we saw Mike Leach try to do it at Washington State. When it was working, it was fine, but it's not something you could do consistently. And that's what I think the difference is going to be. And when you talk about Utah getting in the college football playoff, you're not looking, or I should say, I'm not looking for Utah to be the fourth best team there that's going to be a sacrificial lamb to Georgia, Ohio State, or Alabama. I'm looking for Utah to compete. I'm looking for them to not just make the playoff, but win a game and get into the national championship. Most of y'all know me as an Oklahoma dude, right? That's been the great scorn of our lifetime. It's just we would get to this damn thing, and then we would get our head handed to us, and that ain't fun. So much so that when Oklahoma didn't make it in 2020 and got in the Cotton Bowl, everybody was excited because it felt like a game they could win, right? That's what you want for your Utah. You don't want to get to the college football playoff just to say you made it. You want to get to the college football playoff because you have an opportunity to win the national championship. Year one for USC, I expect them to come out with a bunch of firepower. They're going to be very talented. And if they're able to get some real key wins, I think Fresno State, quiet as it's kept, is a key win for them. Same thing with Notre Dame. You're beat up on most of, if not all, of the Pac-12. We'll talk about you well. Thanks for watching this video. And remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the #1 ranked show YouTube channel.